Hello, and welcome back to the Sensory Play Space podcast. I'm your host, Uni, and today we have one of my favorite people here as a guest, and I'm really excited to share the space and share the stage and the conversation with my good friend and pelvic floor physical therapist and many, many other things that I'll let her name off how she wants to be identified. Dr. Brittney Ellers. So let's just start with why don't you tell us who you are, what makes you tick, what you're currently curious about, what do you want us to know about you?
Well, hi. Thanks for having me. I am Brittney Ellers. I do have a doctorate in physical therapy, so you can call me Dr. B if you'd like. What makes me tick? Well, okay, back up. There's so many other things. Pelvic floor physical therapist. I prefer pelvic physical therapist these days, just kind of cutting out the floor because we're not always focused on the floor. However, that can be something we center today if we'd like. I like to see the entire pelvis as a zone of genius for me and how it connects to the rest of the body, but also to the rest of your emotional being, your spiritual being. So I truly feel like I'm just holistic in the way I look at things. And okay, now to what makes me tick. My dog. Just kidding.
Seems pretty accurate.
It's relatable and it's true. She keeps me going. She adds a lot of spice to my life. Friends and family, and just having these intimate moments with people. Having I guess not in the sense of what makes me tick, but what just keeps me engaged in life, like what makes me feel like this is all worth it in this human experience, this to be with people,
Mm,
whether they're friends or family or clients.
mhm. That's very
Yeah.
Taurian of you.
Is it? Oh yeah, you're right.
Taurians are very, very relational people, so definitely.
Yeah, I'm loyal.
Yes. How's your connection to your body feeling today? Let's check in.
Yeah. I mean, it feels really good. I had a pretty big week. It was a really big body like asking of my body this week, but great because I was ovulating, so I had the energy. I just came off of a basically a 2-hour drive, so I feel like still settled in my seat in a way, but also when you're on the move from a drive, it's like okay, we're plucking up and then replanting down, so I still feel like I'm putting my roots down for the moment.
Okay.
But excited. I feel good.
Yeah, I feel like this is a question I ask frequently, whether it be like just with friends or like whenever I'm starting private sessions with clients. I like to start here, even whenever I'm like holding circles, holding and facilitating groups of people. It's like, how are you feeling? What's happening in your body? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that we spend so much time in our head.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we like kind of create these like compartmentalizations of self and body and feeling and emotions and because of the busyness of life. And so it's really interesting because many people respond with good. And I'm like, okay, what does good mean? Let's dig in, dig a little deeper. What is, can you like paint a picture of what good is feeling like in your body today?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I like that you kind of took us on a little bit of a journey to give us a little taste of maybe what good means for you.
A little insight. I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, I guess to take you in a little deeper is I feel like a lot of pressure sometimes, like literally in my ass. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have to get up and move and do
Mm-hmm.
things. Excuse me. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that this morning, going on a walk and then going to the gym. And then I had to sit in the car, but that made me feel good to kind of get that energy moving a bit. And then I can settle in. And once I landed here, just I feel settled and comfortable, but not like an excessive amount of pressure in my pelvic floor, like literally asking me to move my ass.
That's funny. I I can relate to that because I don't like sitting for too long. Like most of my work until maybe the last like 5 years has been on my feet. Like I was a waitress, I was a server, I did event marketing, and so I was always like on my feet on the go. And then moving into more like computer work, like most of us do now. Um, I just like my body like screams. And so I often like in my workday will stand and sit and move, like I'll change positions like every 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
whenever I'm working around people, it feels very chaotic. But like in my own flow, it makes sense.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, it's
Mm.
funny because I'm also just like settling into my mom's office.
Hmm.
Her seating is so funny. She's smaller than I am.
Awesome.
So yeah, but she's got a little footrest, so I'm resting my feet. I feel, yeah, feel good.
Cool. Well, let's get into it. So how long have you been doing the things that you do with the pelvic
Area, the
area?
pelvic
I like
bowl,
you removed floor from my vocabulary
pelvis.
from with the pelvis.
Yeah,
How long have you been working with the pelvis?
for a long time. Um, I first got into PT. I graduated from PT school in 2016, and then by 2019, I was focusing on the pelvic area, pelvic floor. Um, so what's math? We're in 2025.
I don't know.
So like
For
six
a while.
years,
Yeah.
6 years doing this, almost like
Hmm.
going on my 10th year doing physical therapy.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's been a freaking ride
Yeah. Yeah.
because like everything, I don't know, maybe not like everything, but my experience has been very personal
Hmm.
alongside my professional growth. And I kind
Hmm.
of let my personal dictate my professional growth. A little
Hmm.
selfish in that way.
Hmm.
What I choose to learn and dive into and explore is oftentimes because I have a personal interest and curiosity.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it started with my own pelvic issues. Like I was already a physical therapist and outpatient ortho, working with athletes, working with the everyday athlete, weekend warriors, kids. I was stressed out, burnt out. I had a self pleasure session that was like a 5 minute vibe experience and hopped right off of bed and
By
got
by vibe, you mean vibrator.
correct.
Sorry for the kids that aren't up on the
Yeah.
lingo.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, that led to a really painful pelvic floor experience that feels very similar to a UTI, if anyone out there is familiar with that. Not the greatest sensation. And then yeah, I was lucky. I was working with a pelvic floor PT at the time. She was my patient. And we chatted because I called her. I was in so much pain. I felt like I had to go to the bathroom every 2 minutes and didn't know what was going on. Thought I had an infection, possibly from my vibrator, like being not cleaned well enough. And yeah, she just talked me through basically what we all know as down regulating the nervous system, taking big, deep diaphragmatic breaths. She dared me to do it again, but this time not rush off and actually enjoy the experience, maybe even lingering in that. And so I took that advice. I did it. I felt better pretty immediately, but then also realized that there was a lot that added on to that experience. And it wasn't just necessarily like the vibrator scenario. However, it was definitely a part of it and definitely a lesson to look into. But yeah, from there, I kind of just got all into pelvic floor, which I feel like for a lot of people, they connect it to the pregnancy, birth, postpartum experience, which is how I took that as well. But always underneath it all, there's been this curiosity about sexuality and sensuality and how to embody that in the most authentic way
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
myself and then person to person.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that so many people can relate to having this connection from specifically like that part of body. Like I know that my own self, like it has been such a journey. And that was, I feel like in parts like how our relationship began. We were both kind of like navigating into this curious space of self like analyzation and self-discovery and kind of like deep diving into our own intimacy and our sensuality and our expression in that. And through kind of like being mirrors with one another, like we've grown so much, like into so many avenues with this work. But I think that like to the point that you said, right? Like many of us have disconjointed relationships with our body as a whole, but especially there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of story around like the pelvic region, specifically with the context of like our sexual organs and the way that they function, how they're supposed to function, what they're supposed to be used for, what they're supposed to look like. There's so many stories. And
So many. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some things that you've uncovered like in these last like I'll say we started working together and kind of like I started witnessing your journey really deep diving into this works. I believe we started connecting in like 2019.
Mhm.
So it's been a minute and it's been like a lot of growth. But what are some things that you feel like you've uncovered or like if you can think of anything that feels like really interesting about like the self-discovery and like how self-discovery like evolves people's connection to the pelvic floor, to the pelvis. I'm gonna
You can
try to
still
like
say
ride
pelvic
well, I'm
floor.
gonna try to ride the wave with you and just be like, we're shifting from the pelvic floor to the pelvis.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that is such a good question. And there's so many different directions we could take with this. And
Mhm.
maybe it'll be helpful to, I guess, share my path with some of it. Um, like I said, I had the pelvic floor, more of the tightness, the actual like physical manifestation of stress felt in my pelvic floor. And what I've uncovered is obviously, I personally feel like the body is just a map for what's going on with the internal landscape, but you can access your internal landscape through your external landscape, meaning your body. Um, I personally was not necessarily ready to dive right into sexuality conversations or, yeah, just sex was very, very uncomfortable for me to talk about for a long time, even in 2019. I feel like I was kind of just dipping my toes in. And what felt comfortable for me was actually touching on periods. Like blood to me, periods to me were not as taboo as talking about sex. And, being late 20s and also being on hormonal birth control at the time, that was another layer of disconnection that I was experiencing. I mean, I wasn't even sure if my period was going to come back or not if I came off of it, but that was a piece. Um, I was in a relationship at the time, and like all simultaneously was this questioning, this curiosity. Can I feel my period come back? Can I feel that wave of hormonal fluctuation and ride that? And will that change if like it will it change the attraction that I have for my partner? Because that's something I think a lot of people worry about. Um, it didn't change my attraction necessarily, sexual attraction to him, but just generally, I was not connecting with him anymore on an emotional level, which is another piece. The emotional safety that I needed to feel within my relationships was paramount if I wanted to express myself fully in a physical way.
That
And
part.
that doesn't go both ways all the time. Sometimes it's the other way around, right?
Mhm,
Sometimes like you kind of have to be physically intimate and then you're like
mhm.
feeling close and then you can share something vulnerable. But for
Yeah,
me, it was emotional first.
yeah. That's so, I mean, that hits home for me. Like I feel like our path has been like a little bit opposite where like I'm a
Mhm.
very like sexual and sexually expressive person. I'm very curious in my sexuality.
I was
And
very repressed.
I mean, not to say that I was not experiencing repression, but my repression definitely showed up differently. And like,
Yes.
like I grew up with, you know, living with my dad and stepmom and going to church at 3 times a week, being like the star child youth group member,
Mhm.
but then also going to my mom's and stepdad's during the summer where my mom was like an active practicing Wiccan, and they owned a porn store. And so from like the earliest of age, I was just like watching porn and like looking at sex and like exploring my own sexuality through really a lot of voyeurism.
Mm,
I also had a lot of repression, not because I feared my body, but more so because I didn't want to get pregnant. I grew up in West Texas. I have a massive family, I have like 400 relatives, and I witnessed people like design a life path that I didn't want to live because they got pregnant. And so that was like a lot of the repression that I experienced was like to avoid versus like avoid that outcome versus to avoid pleasure.
mm.
Um, so
Fascinating.
yeah, so it's super interesting because whenever we met and we started working together, a lot of what you were sharing around like periods and around like the menstrual cycle and cycle syncing is what really expanded me deeper into my sexuality
Mm.
and helps me really heal like the energetic like barriers that were manifesting into pain and into like discomfort and into like actual like reactivity that formed as like a like infections essentially.
Totally. I want to name that a little deeper because I feel like it's so prevalent. And yeah, just like getting off the phone yesterday with someone interested in working with me and just this chronic BV, bacterial vaginosis, but not to minimize anyone's diagnosis necessarily, but to maybe take a broader look at what we all experience as women, maybe at one point or another in our lives. Bacterial vaginosis, UTIs, urinary tract infections, um, yeast infections, pain, vulvodynia, pain with sex at any point, pain with pleasure, pain after orgasm, like all of that is going back to the period thing too. Missing periods, irregular periods, really painful periods, all indicative, potentially, yes, of something physical happening. And could there also be a little layer of energetics that we need to address? For me, it was a yes, absolutely. And sounds like it was for you too.
Yeah, yeah, for me, like I have a history of like the women on my mom's side of the family have all had early hysterectomy. So I think that like for people that believe in spirituality and ancestry and genetics, like I think that each of us holds parts of the people that came before us. And so I think that there was energetically in my body, like in my spiritual self, like there's so much that I've like carried over from the women before me. And that was like part of what manifested for me, like in my menstrual cycle, whenever I got my period and all through high school, I had intensive periods to the point of like getting nauseous, getting sick, like not being able to
Mm.
function. I went on hormonal birth control. I got off because it made me mentally unstable and then learned to just like navigate the pain. And so like whenever I met you and first started working with you, my level of capacity for pain is so high. My like my tap out point typically starts at like an 8 or 9, right? That's
Mm.
whenever I really start to actually feel the pain because I've spent so long really just like numbing it. And whenever we started kind of digging into the layers, like what really came up for me was like this exploration of how the body manifests and holds fear and stress and trauma and shame. Like in my sexual journey, like I've experienced sexual abuse from partners. That's how I like moved through my virginity, was through like a non-consensual connection,
Mm.
and really just spent a lot of time repressing these things that like I couldn't control. And so moving into like confronting them, that also meant I had to move into feeling. And
Yeah,
feeling, whenever you've spent so long, like not actually feeling or working so intensely to feel, um, can be really intense.
totally. Totally. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think I knew that.
Mm.
Or maybe I did know and I forgot. But
I don't, I feel like these sorts of things I often just kind of like chew.
I think what I didn't know was that it was your
Mhm.
first time,
Mm, mhm,
which when you have a negative or
mhm,
traumatic experience as your first time
mhm,
and you push that down or you tuck that away, but you maybe want to still be sexual with someone new, you never know how that's going to show up.
mhm.
And so I wonder what your next few experiences were like until you confronted your assailant, right? Is
Yeah.
that, yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
assaulter, assailant.
I mean, I confronted this person pretty quickly, but I didn't know what I was confronting. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I didn't even have awareness that that was something non-consensual
Mm,
until the Me Too movement came, right? Like until that came about and these stories started coming out, and I really like tapped back into the story and was like, oh, yes, like I was a culprit in this scenario, but this also was not consensual, right? Like this
mm,
wasn't what I wanted to experience. But I think that what really happened for me is it navigated the way that I expressed my sexuality. It navigated how I like didn't have agency over my body. It navigated how my body was like everyone else's.
mm.
And it really created a lot of like numbness in my entire physical body, but especially like in my pelvic region, in my sexuality, in the way that like I felt like sexually.
Totally. I feel like another good word, potentially, tell me if I'm wrong, similar to the way a lot of women feel when they're on birth control, is just muted. Like, yeah, maybe numb, like you're not associated with it
Yeah.
always, but there's just this kind of low tone to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally resonate a bit with like giving the power away almost to someone
Mm-hmm.
else, specifically with your maybe pleasure and sexuality, that sexual essence and energy that you come with. Yeah, I've been having conversations lately actually with a lot of women who they have high drive or like high desire, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering though, because a lot of the times they're coming in with like really great emotional, deep relationships, but it's really hard to like match their needs
Mm-hmm.
physically. And I'm just always questioning or with curiosity and love, of course, but like, um, is the high desire to be sexual with your partner because why? Like
Mm-hmm.
XYZ, what are you getting out of it? Like, what do you actually feel like you want out of that? And is there something that you can give to yourself that maybe you don't need to depend on a partner for, where you'll feel full? So there's less pressure even when you show up with your partner who already might feel a little anxiety about making you come first and,
Mm-hmm.
or like that's in quotes,
Yeah.
making you come.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little outsourcing of power in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of like even like the saving up your energy for just that
Mm-hmm.
experience, right? And then not giving it to yourself.
Yeah. it's so rich, just like the exploration, right? Like
Yeah.
I think around this time last year, I like reached out to you and I was like, I'm ready to talk about these things.
Yes.
And I was not.
I know, because it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. I avoided it. But like I like it's just like really interesting because even when we've processed something, like the body still holds the story, the body still holds the emotion. And like why I was like mentally, I was like, okay, I'm ready to start like really like putting these things out here so that it's not just like this like secret identity, because part of the reason why both of us do the work that we do is like the navigation of our personal journey and wanting to support people and guide them into their own like agency and their own liberation.
Mhm.
And so much of the work that I do and like the work that you do really connects to the way people's bodies hold and store and express trauma.
Mhm.
And I think that that like is such a special thing that is often bypassed whenever we're like in these sexuality spaces, right? Like sexuality is marketed as like I'm empowered and I'm a goddess and I'm a king and like look how sensual I am. But like the journey to get to that place of feeling like fully expressed for even people that haven't experienced like trauma similar to like what I have or you have or other people have, like
Mhm.
I think even the average person, it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of really diving deeper into self and exploring. And I'm really curious if you have any, I don't know, because people like people like, what can I do? How can I apply? What's the
They like the
fix?
practical tips.
What's this quick fix? So is there anything that you like, where do you start? Like if I'm trying to discover how to feel more empowered and like in relation to my pelvic health, like what's something that you could give me just to like walk away with?
Mhm. Okay. This is really, I want to take you into like maybe a very common client journey, and I'll tell you what I tell them. Um, because like you're saying, even someone who hasn't had any kind of trauma to their pelvic region in any way, shape, or form, like we're taking away any sexual trauma, any birth trauma, any medical trauma, okay? You're just a gal who didn't learn about her body, and here you are, like you don't have kids, you're leaking when you do any kind of jumping workout, any kind of cardio.
Yeah, that's super. Have so many friends that have that's been a story for them.
Exactly. And the narrative, right, is um, my pelvic floor is probably too weak and my bladder is really small. And those are probably very true. But how I approach that um, for someone, say, who's just getting into this work, right? You can look at things like the way you use the bathroom with pee, with poop, before you even think about sex with yourself or with another person. And if there's anything is if there's any shame, if there's any disgust, if there's any lack of acceptance for who you are as a human who needs to empty. This is practical as fuck, okay?
Just cracking up because I just remember whenever you first really got brave in this work, we would just be in like the coffee shop and you'd be like, everyone poops. And
Yeah.
it really normalized that for me because I like, yes, I am this person you're talking about, right? Like there's so much around containing myself. I used to wet the
Yeah.
bed as a kid, and like my
Mm,
dad like got me to stop wetting the bed by shaming me, right? Like
mm,
it was like you're not supposed to do that. Like there was so much fear around wetting the bed that I like wouldn't sleep at night or I'd get up 12 times, you know? And so like whenever I first started working with you, there was so much around letting go. So carry
Li-
on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no, no. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Literally. Oh, like even knowing that about your own history, like take a peek back at how you've lived your life and what your relationship like is like with going to the bathroom. Are you rushing all the time there? Are you forcing? Are you pushing? Can you not hold? Can you hold too much? And you're not actually listening to your body cues, those are kind of the first big things. I mean, just to give people kind of a range, obviously, the range of normal is very, very wide and different for people. But if we're talking normal adult, okay, your bladder on the smaller end can hold 400 milliliters, which is 13.5 ounces. So think about a regular size drinking can. This is 12 ounces. Like your bladder should be able to hold something like that. And going to the bathroom 5 to 8 times a day is fairly normal. If you're going any more than that, you're probably basically selling yourself short. And like this example of this, you know, I don't want to call her an avatar, but it's definitely like a very common case where we're taught also as young girls, just in case, because you can't go pee standing up, you have to go just in case before we go anywhere. Even if we know where we're going has a public bathroom. But then there's also this stigma about going to the bathroom in public where people can hear you or smell you or experience you.
My mom used to accuse me of having like a bathroom obsession because and
What?
like I this is all just connecting right now as you're like now like as you're saying these things where I'm like, oh, this ties into like my bedwetting, right? Where it was
Yeah.
like and I like me bedwetting, like sometimes it comes from like stress or trauma or like other things. My
Mm-hmm.
bedwetting was because I would dream about going like I would be so relaxed. Like I would dream about going to the bathroom and I
Mm,
would just like go. And so for me it was just like such a like contrast. Like I was so relaxed, I was so calm, I was so in my body and then it got jarred out because I did something wrong. And
right.
so then I really became obsessed with the bathroom and obsessed with my pelvic floor and I've lived most of my life. I still navigate that, right?
Mm,
When I get stressed, whenever I get afraid, if I get angry, like my pelvic floor is the first, my pelvis is the first thing to tell me something
mm-hmm,
is off. Like,
mm-hmm. Totally. Ugh, so good that you're like piecing these all together and you're attaching um different emotions or different like energetic emotional scenarios that then impact your body or your body reflects that back. I think that's very common for so many people. Um
mm,
yeah, it's interesting too because I think the common thing for a lot of women is this backside tension. So if you're thinking about the pelvic floor in terms of like a diamond and or even a clock, 12 o'clock being the top part, kind of by your clitoris, and then 6 o'clock being by your tailbone, basically between your sits bones on the backside, left to right, is where a lot of women carry tension. And then they lack the awareness on the top by 12 o'clock in terms of like contraction and coordination. It's often where I need to help them gain range of motion or teach them how to gain range of motion for themselves through internal hands-on or wands in, um, and opening up the back end and then finding this connection to the top part, especially when you want something to happen so strongly, like a contraction, like a Kegel, when you are under pressure. So, when you are full bladder, when you are jumping, when you're coughing, when you're sneezing, when you're laughing, all the things. And you want it to work really beautifully together circumferentially, but that's not, again, often the case. So, kind of leading through this journey, this client journey experience, we are there working. I'm talking her through all the things. You're probably so overwhelmed. And that amount of overwhelm, if you dive deeper below it, what's there? It's this, oh, fuck, why didn't I know this about myself? Why wasn't I taught this about my body? And so
shame.
it's shame, but it's also a lot of grief.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, yeah, you might be shaming yourself for not knowing it, but also don't blame yourself because
Mhm.
it's likely that your adults, caretakers, whoever also didn't know.
Mhm.
Maybe they were doing the best they could, or maybe they purposely, put things on you.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a lot of sadness with it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
maybe even sometimes above that is anger. I felt that.
I definitely have felt a lot of anger with my body.
Yeah. I'd say
And
lately, in like the last year, I've had to think about my relationship to anger and rage. And I notice when I get in heated arguments with anyone, my voice goes up. But I judge people around me whose voices also go up when I'm trying to talk to them and they're feeling rage or anger, not necessarily towards me, but just in general. I'm like, whoa, shh. It's very fascinating, but definitely
yeah.
finding a great way to express that. I commonly will scream into pillows. That's fairly normal. I've asked my partner to flex so that I could punch him. Not because I'm mad at him necessarily, but like I just
The
want
motion.
to move. I don't have a body bag at home, but yeah, I just want to move it through this way. Sometimes I'll
Mhm.
push the wall um, with two hands if I really want to like get that out. Those are some practical things.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, I know we mentioned a few things, but what are some other ways that you've witnessed or like experienced trauma stored in the body, like on your own and clients and partners, people in the community? Like, what are some things that you can kind of like vocalize that if someone's listening to this and they're curious and they're like, how would I know? Like, I've got trauma in the body. I got trauma in my pelvic, like being stored in the pelvic region.
Okay, yeah. I feel like again there's so many ways I could take that question. I'm curious if this is what you're thinking of me naming, but yeah, we talked about symptoms and other experiences you could be having. I just think honestly if there's this sense of fear or a lack of vitality, if there
What's vitality?
anything that makes you feel alive. Yeah, it's just
Mhm.
aliveness. If you feel like there's any area in your life where you feel dull, muted, I think those are very general, not necessarily physical um, symptoms or signs, but I feel like that is so common.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that very much so feels like a result of like, because I feel like the way that I witness the body, at least in my own body, and like as I'm working with clients and hearing them kind of like share their story and I'm like analyzing it, it's like there's something that happens and then it starts to kind of tingle. So like for me, whenever my pelvic region is starting to like speak to me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it like it may be like I start to get that tightness, I start to get urgency, I need to pee, like I feel like I need to pee all the time, or I get like my IBS flares, my
Mm.
appetite changes, I start feeling tension in other parts of my body that also starts to move down to like literally like I have so much connectivity and attention on my pelvic region. And
Mm-hmm.
part of that for me is like I've had so much trauma with that area. So I have like an oversensitivity to it.
Totally.
Um, and then that can like, amplify. And like if I don't take care of it, if I don't slow down, if I don't shift or change, like into these like physical symptoms, like you mentioned before, like yeast or BV or
Yeah.
stinging or tingling or
Totally. I
yeah.
want to I want to mention a couple other things. I'd say
Mhm.
if there's well, okay, we talked pain, but like pain where um skin things. I think that's huge. I've had a lot of skin things down there. Um not just like vaginal dryness, but like vulvar dryness, itchiness. I've had this is kind of gross, but I've had I don't have shame around it anymore. I'm just saying for the listener, if they're not like, if they're squeamish, I don't care. But I've had a pilonidal cyst before, which is basically like a hair getting trapped in one of the follicles, and it ended up getting infected. Have no idea why or how necessarily, but this was post college. And I had to get it like drained and packed for 2 weeks, and couldn't sit, couldn't lay down on my back. I had to like be on my belly or my side for 2 weeks while it was healing. And I was gonna also mention like the tenderness of any scar tissue if you do have scars, whether also that is like vulvar, vaginal, pelvic floor, like if you have these different varying degrees of tears after birth, if you have had a cesarean, if you've had abdominal surgery of any kind, yes, hysterectomies, but even umbilical or inguinal hernias, if you've had any low back pains, issues with your hips, like a lot of that speaks to the pelvic floor stuff.
And not to mention, like you named off so many like
I know.
things that are so relatable for people. And
Yeah.
then there's like this whole other category of like reproductive like
Oh,
health challenges, right? Like endometriosis and polyps and all like all of
PCOS.
those, yeah, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've talked about so much, like we and so many specifically women can like name like we weren't taught about this, we didn't know, we don't know what our bodies do, we don't know
Mm-hmm.
why we feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot to like learn. Like it's
Yep.
empowering, and like you mentioned, it's grief,
Yep.
and then it's also
Totally.
just a journey. Once you know, then it's like, what do I do with this information?
Right. It's kind of, it's such an interesting road. Like that's, I think, where the road forks, because you can then have this information and realize, and then what do you do with it? Do you take that and run and learn how to embody it, piece it together for yourself, or are you going to go outsource more of that power?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
take those pieces and be like, okay, well, poor me, I didn't learn it and it's really hard to understand it. So I'm just going to stay here in my comfort, which again, totally valid if you don't want to move into a different level or variation of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand where people just are just comfortable. Like it is not comfortable to look at this stuff, any of it, but it can
No.
be exciting.
And that was something that like we talked about like a year into my like cycle syncing, right? Where it
Mm-hmm.
was like I had this realization that like I had been committed to so much work and not much had changed, right? And I was like pretty pissed off about it, and also had like surrendered into a moment of like, okay, maybe this is just what it is. Like maybe I will never like move into this place of like not experiencing the experiences that I have in my body. And what do I do with that? Which I think is like where we have to get to frequently whenever we have like bigger challenges, illness, disease. It's the surrender of finding empowerment and also having self-compassion and also being honest with like what it is. Like we don't always have to cure something. Healing isn't curing. Healing is like moving into more like empowerment with what is available for you.
Right. More wholeness, that
Mm-hmm.
internal sense of wholeness. And I want to speak back to the reproductive issues because, of course, I mean, for my friends, my community, everyone's on some level of a TTC journey trying to conceive naturally. And oh my gosh, the narrative that's being shared with everyone, um, with women beyond 35 is that it's going to be really, really hard for you to get pregnant. And when do you then give up on the natural course and take a different route? And when do you actually look at that? And how does that feel? And what are all these layers and pieces of now we have this extra pressure on sex and timing and oh my God, it is crazy what a cycle that is of excitement, potential possibility, waiting, expecting, holding, hoping, dreaming, disappointment, fuck, dread, embarrassment, shame, um, disempowerment. And then here we go on the ride again. And it's like, how do we cut that off a bit? And how do
Mhm.
we stop that in its tracks? It's, I think, very, very challenging, especially if you've been trying for a long time. But something, at least in my own journey too, this is another piece because I've always wanted to be a mom. I've envisioned that for myself through and through. Have I ever gotten pregnant? No. Have I been having unprotected sex? Yes. Have I been doing it when I'm ovulating? No. I'm turning 35 this year. I'm wondering if that's going to be a part of my story. And I just recently had to, not had to, but I got to come to terms with if it never happens for me, will I be okay? And the answer luckily is yes.
I'm really
But
happy to hear that.
yeah, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
No, it's like it's a hard vision to quote unquote let go of. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard many, many stories of this too. People having a hard time conceiving naturally. They go through all the different routes, IVF, all kinds of variations of that, and doesn't stick. And then this couple lets that possibility go. They're on vacation. They have great connective, relaxed sex, and they're successful in conceiving
Mhm.
a full term pregnancy.
Yeah. Because the shift, the focus, the stress, like there's so many things that happen within like the opening of the body
Right.
in that.
The surrender is so powerful,
Mhm.
but it's really hard.
Yeah. Which I think really, I don't know, like maybe you can expand or like shift if I'm not on track. But I feel like the way that we build that connection with our body like opens up that possibility. So like I've been currently really deeply exploring intimacy and not just sexual intimacy, but intimacy in every single form. And so everything that I'm doing, I'm like, how does this tie to intimacy? How am I being more vulnerable? Like what is the details? What's the like little intricacies here? And how does that expand into my life? And I think about that a lot with how I've like come into more understanding and acceptance and like connectivity with my body because my body was so numb for so long that like I couldn't turn on everything all at once. It was
Mm-hmm.
really like it's not possible, right? So it was really these little teeny tiny like points of like surrendering, accepting, and then one day it was like shift.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, I want to relate it maybe to something also more relatable. Uh, if someone's on like a weight loss or strengthening journey, it's so interesting. And I share that because I'm currently on like this exploration. I wouldn't say I'm like on a weight loss journey, but on a journey to see how I can embody more dynamism or to be more dynamic in my body. Uh, be more explosive, be bigger, take up more space, right? And have endurance for a lot of different things, for a lot of different reasons. But what you're speaking to, I feel like also is the more you, I'll say the more often, not like the more in terms of time, one time spent, but the more often you show up, maybe you practice this with yourself, right? You show up in a little container for yourself, whether that's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, a whole hour, right? You're not pushing or forcing your body to show up and do anything that it's not necessarily like willing to do. You are showing up with open curiosity. You're showing up with presence and being available to hearing what your body is ready to like express.
Yeah. So
There's no
what?
force. There's just presence. Like it's sometimes really challenging to name like the things that
Mm-hmm.
you then feel. This is why
Mm-hmm.
sometimes having a guide is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not to lead you somewhere necessarily, but to hold space for you.
Yeah. I mean, well, two things. Yes, I'll start with this last bit you said, right? Like healing requires community, especially relational healing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and our sexuality is a relational expression that starts with self.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel that like it is very necessary for us to have the guides, the mirrors, the people that can reflect to us what we have become numb to, what we've never
Mm-hmm.
seen, what we've never experienced, and to help us like find the bravery to move into that so that we can expand, become more dynamic, take up more space
Yeah,
to kind of like reflect back some of the things you said. But what
exactly.
what was coming up for me that I was getting so excited about was there's this way that we like really normalize routine, right? And so we're like, I'm going to eat this way and I'm going to move this way and I'm going to sleep this way and I'm going to meditate this way. But it's never like I'm going to masturbate this way.
Oh
I'm
my God.
going to like explore my body this way. I'm going to like explore with a partner this way. And I've been like looking for these words as I'm like talking about the merging of wellness as a holistic lens, looking at like all the parts of our wellness and well-being, which includes sexuality. And that, I don't know, so that just felt really exciting to me. I was like, oh, it's like we're creating rituals around how we navigate our sexual expression and curiosity.
100%. I think the phrase, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, is
Mhm.
a very curious phrase. So, kind of tying it back to, do you rush when you go to the bathroom? Do you force yourself to go faster? Is that the same in your sexual expression, whether you're alone or with someone else?
Mhm.
I find
Mhm.
that very interesting. Maybe we put up a poll. Is this you? And could it be even not a challenge, but an invitation
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
do things maybe a little differently? And if you don't even know what the hell to do else,
Mhm.
talk to us.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
this comes up a lot with people in group classes, right?
yeah.
And with couples that come to me where they're like, we really want to become more intimate, we want to become more connected, and each person's telling their own story,
Mm,
but especially in like cis het relationships where there's this like societal and internalized story where it's like I am man, which means I'm masculine, which means I operate in this way, and it means I have to hold space in this way, and these are the things I do. I am woman, I'm supposed to do this, and da, da, da. So there's these like stories that they're like holding and navigating, and they're like, we're trying to become connected with these two different stories, and we're holding them. It's just super fascinating because it's like that question right there, right? Like, how do you do the thing? And I can say that, like, whenever I'm witnessing people that are like curious and exploring and wanting to like expand the way that they relate with one another, there's often a similar pattern, right? Where one person might be super open and the other person is super constricted, and that person that's constricted is navigating the entire experience, right?
hmm I think,
Because they're contracted and their partner doesn't have this bravery to guide them
mhm.
into something else. And so I think about that a lot where I'm like, what if you were more curious? What if you were more what if this was more play versus
Mhm.
like performance?
Totally, totally. I was gonna say if you're thinking about a couple, whoever they are, as a dyad, but like if they were one organism, a phrase I use a lot is you need to go at this pace of the slowest part of you. And if the slower part is the one that feels more constricted, more concerned, more fearful, back up,
Mhm.
meet them where they're at, hold their hand, lovingly ask with curiosity, no pressure, there's no expectation. What would you be open to? You know? And I will say, when you talk about the couple who, like, one's really open, one's like, I mean, I don't know, whatever. Um, that was so me and James
Mhm.
when we first were exploring some of this stuff together, which I want to say it was 2021, 2022.
Mhm.
I don't think we'd been dating that long. 2022, I think. We hadn't been
Mhm.
dating that long, but the first time that we did a shoot together was a shoot with you, and it was a
Mhm.
nude shoot in a
Mhm.
new location.
There's so much edge for both of you.
And for you, I think, right? Like
I was
more
so
from the being in the new location piece, like not knowing where you were going, and yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
I mean,
that's anxiety
any
riddling.
logistical
Yeah.
like logistics will stress me the fuck out,
I know.
but this space whole like that piece was just like really funny
I know.
to witness you guys in that dynamic because one, like I'm really comfortable with you, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're like, and here's my naked partner, right? And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
this other like shifting into this mindset of not being like these are friends into like this is a space I'm holding.
Yeah.
And then also like holding that for you guys to do because all of us had to kind of navigate out of that to drop into the experience.
Yeah.
And it was
Oh
just
my
really
gosh.
fascinating witnessing both of you crumble in like your own ways and together as a couple.
So much ego shattered in that one session.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Talk about the narrative of like, I want to be feminine and in my feminine flow and I want to be able to surrender. And it's like, then fucking surrender, bitch. Like, and that's my inner bitch talking to my like
Me to
sad.
me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me to me. I don't necessarily talk to myself all the time like that, but I can do that now. I think it's funny.
Sometimes you
Um,
just need a hard pep talk.
yeah, a little tough love. Yeah, that was really funny. I think there was a huge part of me that was giving my power away to James in those moments
Mhm.
and being upset with him and being prickly with him. That was a common,
Mhm.
uh, what's the word I'm looking for? That was a common dynamic that we
Mhm.
had, not even in just photo shoot experiences. It was almost, yeah, monthly, maybe,
Yeah.
according to luteal phase.
Which happens a lot in couples that hold those dynamics of like
Mhm.
masculine, feminine, like gender roles
Totally.
that I see and I experience like with clients where it's like I want him to be, I need him to do, but I can't let go, I can't change, I can't shift. And I don't work with people in the same context that you do, right? Like I'm working with people on really exploring self so that they can go into their privacy and explore themselves sexually and
Right.
like take the tools that I'm teaching them and bring them into the bedroom, bring them into their relationship. But I'm really curious, like that just makes me think about like, okay, what is actually happening when I give these tools, right? Like
Hmm.
how are we like how are they being applied and how if a person is having issues with letting go of control with their partner, what is their like what does their one-on-one practice look like, right? What's their own like self-pleasure practice? What's their own connection to their like sexuality, to their own surrender look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for me. That's very, very curious.
Mhm.
It's very, very curious. I think for me personally, I have constantly been butting up against a resistance,
Mhm.
specifically related to self pleasure. And for a
Mhm.
long time, it was like, it was even uh, weird word to use for me for a long time, pleasure. It didn't feel exciting to me. Didn't feel like it was worth the struggle. Um, and at least for me, what shifted is language. Like
Mm,
the language around what it is that I actually wanted or could meet myself with was like a sex lab or a
mm,
sex experiment with myself. And that, in whatever weird way, made it okay
mm,
to do something different than what I normally would do.
mm,
But even when there's this resistance to doing or spending the time, then I'm like, okay, I can sit with the resistance. I can let myself be okay with that for the moment and know that that eventually it for me it does dissolve to the point where my pussy will, not in a painful way, but she'll make herself known.
mhm,
There's a like an urge, an ache, a heaviness, not in a prolapse way, which is another symptom also, any kind. But it's like she's just calling for it. And I
mhm,
know what that feels like now, and I know what that message means. Um, it's interesting because too, again tying back to other things, but a lot of the times when people feel turn on, they experience it as the need to go to the bathroom. Like, what if it was just turn on? Can we like sit with it, hold it a little longer, 15 minutes? And then instead of like off gassing, potentially, if you are someone who frequently goes to the bathroom or feels that urge or need to release, what does growing your capacity feel like?
mm,
Spending more time. And you could think about that in terms of growing your bladder or growing in pleasure and actually leaning into the female body physiology 25, 45 minutes until you're fully engorged and actually maybe aching for some penetration. I think that would be an interesting experiment to play with.
mm, mm. I'll just drop this nugget here for anyone listening who cares, right? Like
They care.
off of what you just said, like I think one of the most healing things that was like said to me by a partner, right, is it's just pee. It's just pee, right?
Mm.
Because you're talking about how like there's this like urgency and then you're like I have to go to the bathroom. And for me, like that like really played into the story that I mentioned earlier of like so much shame, so much fear, so much wrong. And like having a partner just be like, oh, just pee, you know.
That sounds like it's probably so nonchalant to him too, or whoever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually deeply healing to that inner child of yours
Yes.
to be able to make a mess
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily worry about the cleanup
The
too.
Virgo with a Virgo mother,
Y-
like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The ability to be messy. Wow.
What's that?
That is play. Well, I want to gonna start to like wrap us up. Like I could stay here with you forever. So you'll
Obviously.
have to definitely come back and we'll have to chat more. But for anyone that's like, okay, like there's a lot here, my head's spinning. What would you say to them? Like where could they start? How can someone start to build like better body liberation, a better connection to their agency, to their expression, to their choice?
It's probably the most simple thing. Put a hand on your heart, put a hand over your low belly or over your pelvic floor, holding your genitals, like just holding. Take a deep breath. It gets to be really simple. It gets to be easy to
That
be
like
connected.
I
Did
like
that get you?
it got me. I'm so tender right now, but yes, yes, yes. Like
Yeah. Yeah, the overwhelm, but literally was in a client session yesterday, and that was exactly the feeling. And all we did was just hold, like with contact, and breathe. Let whatever you're feeling move through you. Don't stuff it down. Let it out. Doesn't even have to have a name for what it is you're feeling. Just let it flow and then see what's there.
Mhm.
Maybe after the fact. If you're a journaler, go ahead and journal. Because, yeah,
Yeah,
we did mention a lot.
yeah.
I want to acknowledge that. Thank you for hanging on
Mhm.
and listening if you're still here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, where can people find you? What do you have coming up, if someone wants to connect with you?
I am exploring a lot of different ways in sharing my work these days because, yes, my trade is physical therapy, even yoga. That's my background, um, or where I did all my studying early on. But in terms of how I deliver, it's a little different. So I do one on ones in person and online. I am reachable through, or accessible, I should say, through Instagram, but also I'm on Insight Timer now. And I do have a lot of free goodies on my website. So if you are someone who is looking to explore pleasure, different pathways of that, or even understanding your own anatomy, that's something new coming up. So stay on the lookout for that. I have a name, but I'm not sharing it yet. And different pieces with pelvic health, Kegel classes, constipation classes, wands, pelvic wands, and yoni eggs, kind of your basics. But I do have some longer form things, again, new ish, coming out soon. I don't know when you're going to launch this episode or put it out there, but maybe by the time it's out, Vaginal Alchemy will be back in sesh in one way, shape, or form. And that is basically an online group experience that I take women through. So, yeah, I'm playing with a lot of more of the audio. I also have the podcast, my podcast, Pelvic Pulse. So,
What's your drop your web link? I'll also put it in the show notes, but
yeah,
that's where everyone,
BrittneyEllers.com. My name
BrittneyEllers.com.
is spelled Brittneyellers.
Awesome. Bea, this was such a rich conversation. Thank you
It
so
really was.
much for your time and your wisdom and just existing and expressing in the ways that you do.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for
Yeah.
listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.